Hello, everyone. Welcome to our class today. I'm excited to start our journey into history with you. This is Class 10 Social Science, specifically Chapter 1. We're going to explore some fascinating topics that will help us understand our past better. Over the course of this presentation, we'll cover the key themes and ideas from this chapter. So let's get started and make this learning experience engaging and enjoyable. Let's dive into what this chapter is all about. First, we'll explore the French Revolution and how it sparked the idea of the nation. This was a turning point where concepts of citizenship, sovereignty, and national identity started to take shape. Next, we'll look at how nationalism began to develop across Europe, influencing many countries and shaping modern identities. We'll also examine the age of revolutions between 1830 and 1848, a period marked by widespread upheavals and the push for national self-determination. Then, we'll see how the modern nations of Germany and Italy were formed during this time, unifying regions that had long been divided. We'll also discuss how people visualize the nation through symbols, flags, and cultural expressions, making the idea of a shared identity more tangible. Finally, we'll look at the relationship between nationalism and imperialism, understanding how the desire for national strength sometimes led to expansion and dominance overseas. All of these points connect to our overall theme of how modern nations and identities were built through revolutionary ideas, struggles, and cultural expressions. Today, we're going to explore the rise of nationalism in Europe, a powerful force that reshaped the continent during the 19th century. As we look at this slide, notice how nationalism sparked a sense of pride and identity among different nations. It was more than just love for one's country. It became a movement for independence, unity, and self-determination. This wave of nationalism challenged old empires and led to new political boundaries. It connected to our broader theme by showing how the desire for nationhood fueled major political changes and conflicts across Europe. Understanding this rise helps us see the roots of many modern nations and the lasting impact of these nationalistic ideas. In 1848, the French artist Frédéric Soriot created a series of 4 prints that depicted his vision of a world made up of democratic and social republics. Today, we're focusing on the first print in that series. You can see here how he visualized the idea of unity and liberty spreading across the world. In this image, people from Europe and America, men and women of all ages and social classes, are shown marching together in a long procession. They're offering homage to the Statue of Liberty as they pass by it, symbolizing the universal desire for freedom. Now, as you might remember from earlier, during the French Revolution, liberty was personified as a female figure. In this print, that figure is depicted holding a torch, representing enlightenment in one hand and the Charter of the Rights of Man in the other, both powerful symbols of liberty and human rights. At the bottom of the image, you can see the earth, where the remains of old, absolutist institutions are shattered, highlighting the rejection of tyranny and autocracy. Soriot's utopian vision emphasizes the idea that the peoples of the world are grouped into distinct nations, each identifiable through their flags and traditional costumes. It's a celebration of national identities and diversity. Leading this procession, beyond the Statue of Liberty, are the United States and Switzerland, both of which had already established themselves as independent nation-states by that time. This placement underscores the emerging idea of nations united under the principles of democracy and liberty. Overall, this image captures a hopeful and aspirational view of a future where nations come together in pursuit of shared democratic ideals, tying into our broader theme of the evolution of political ideas and national identity. Let's take a closer look at this powerful scene. France, easily recognizable by its revolutionary tricolor, is leading the procession as she approaches the statue. Right behind her, we see the peoples of Germany, carrying the black, red, and gold flag. Now, an interesting historical note here is that when Soriot created this image, Germany wasn't yet a united nation. The flag they're holding actually symbolizes the liberal hopes of 1848, a time when many German-speaking regions aspired to unify into a single nation-state under a democratic constitution. Following the Germans, we see representations of Austria, the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, Lombardy, Poland, England, Ireland, Hungary, and Russia. This diverse group of nations highlights the artist's vision of unity among different peoples. Above, we see Christ, saints, and angels gazing down on the scene. Their presence is symbolic, representing divine fraternity among nations, an ideal that underpins the entire image. This chapter will explore many of these themes, how Soryu visualized the hope for unity, fraternity, and national identity. It's a powerful reflection of the aspirations that fueled the revolutionary and nationalist movements of that era. During the 19th century, we see how nationalism started to emerge as a powerful force across Europe. This wasn't just a passing idea. It really brought about sweeping changes in both the political landscape and the way people thought about their identities. The most significant outcome of these changes was the rise of the nation-state, replacing the old multinational dynastic empires that had dominated for centuries. Now, when we talk about a modern state, we're referring to a system where a centralized authority has sovereign control over a clearly defined territory. This idea had been developing over a long period in Europe, but it was the rise of nationalism that really transformed it into something more inclusive. A true nation-state is one where not only the rulers, but the majority of its citizens share a common identity, a shared history or descent. This sense of commonality isn't something that just appeared out of thin air. It was forged through struggles, through the efforts of leaders and everyday people working together. So, what we see here is how the idea of a nation was built and reinforced, creating a sense of unity that could support the emergence of independent nation-states. This process is crucial to our overall understanding of how Europe moved from a patchwork of empires to a collection of modern nation-states, shaping the political map we recognize today. The first clear expression of nationalism actually emerged during the French Revolution in 1789. At that time, France was a fully established territorial state, governed by an absolute monarch. The revolution brought about significant political and constitutional changes, shifting sovereignty from the monarchy to the people, specifically to the body of French citizens. This was a groundbreaking moment, because it declared that it's the people who now constitute the nation and who will shape its future. The revolutionaries also introduced various measures designed to foster a sense of collective identity among the French people. These efforts aim to unite citizens under a shared idea of nationhood, which is crucial to understanding how modern notions of nationality and patriotism began to take shape. So, in essence, the French Revolution was not just about political change, but also about creating a new sense of belonging and collective purpose among the people. This really set the stage for the development of modern nationalism. Let's take a closer look at a pivotal moment in the French Revolution, the storming of the Bastille in 1789. This event is often seen as the symbolic start of the revolution. The Bastille was a fortress and prison in Paris, and it represented the tyranny of the king's rule. When the common people stormed it, they were not just attacking a prison, they were striking a blow against oppression and demanding change. This act of defiance galvanized the revolutionaries and showed their resolve to fight for liberty and justice. It also marked a turning point that inspired widespread rebellion across France. Throughout this presentation, we'll see how such key moments fueled the broader movement toward democratic ideals and transformed French society forever. Durante 1789, de importants cambios tuvieron lugar que marcaron antes y un después en la historia de Francia. Por ejemplo, surgieron ideas como la de la patria, que significa el padreland, y la del citizen, o sea, el ciudadano. Estas ideas enfatizaban la importancia de una comunidad unida que disfrutaba de derechos iguales bajo una constitución, promoviendo un sentido de pertenencia y justicia para todos. Además, se reemplazó la antigua bandera real por la tricolor, que se convirtió en un símbolo de la nación y de los ideales revolucionarios. También, el estamento general, que era el antiguo órgano de representación, few electo por los ciudadanos activos, y paso a llamarse la Asamblea Nacional, reflejando un cambio en la forma de gobernar, y en la participación política. En ese año, se compusieron nuevos himnos, se tomaron juramentos y se homenajearon a los mártires, to do en nombre de la nación, fortaleciendo el espíritu patriótico. Se estableció un sistema administrativo centralizado que creó leyes uniformes para todos los ciudadanos dentro del territorio, buscando igualdad y orden. Asimismo, se abolieron los derechos de aduana y los peajes internos, facilitando el comercio y la movilidad, y se adoptó un sistema uniforme de pesos, y medidas para garantizar consistencia y justicia en las transacciones. Por último, se promovió unificación lingüística. Se desalentaron los dialectos regionales y el francés, tal como se hablaba y escribía en Paris, se convirtió en la lengua común de toda la nación. Estos cambios no solo transformaron la estructura política y social, sino que también fortalecieron un sentido de identidad nacional, que fue clave para el proceso revolucionario y para construir un nuevo rumbo para Francia. When the news of the events in France spread across Europe, it sparked a significant reaction among students and the educated middle classes in many cities. They began forming Jacobin clubs, inspired by the revolutionary ideas coming out of France. These clubs played a crucial role in spreading revolutionary principles beyond France's borders. Their activities and campaigns helped pave the way for the French armies, which, during the 1790s, moved into neighboring regions like Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and much of Italy. Then, in 1797, Napoleon invaded Italy, marking the start of the Napoleonic Wars. As a result, Napoleon gained control over a large territory, and he introduced many reforms that he had already implemented in France. Although Napoleon's rule did dismantle the democratic institutions in France, he also worked to incorporate revolutionary principles into the administrative system. His goal was to make governance more rational and efficient across the territories he controlled. One of his most lasting contributions was the Civil Code of 1804, commonly known as the Napoleonic Code. This legal framework unified and simplified French laws, emphasizing clarity, property rights, and individual freedoms, principles rooted in the Revolution. Overall, these actions show how Napoleon's influence extended beyond France, shaping legal and administrative systems across Europe and reinforcing the revolutionary ideals of rationality and reform. In 1799, Napoleon seized political power in France, marking a major turning point in the country's history. Following this, he introduced the Civil Code of 1804, which is also known as the Napoleonic Code. This code was a comprehensive set of laws that aimed to unify and simplify the legal system, reflecting Napoleon's vision of order and legal equality. It's a key example of how he used law to consolidate power and modernize France. Throughout this presentation, we see how Napoleon's legal reforms played a crucial role in shaping France's future and reinforcing his authority. Let's take a closer look at the Civil Code of 1804, which is usually known as the Napoleonic Code. This was a significant reform that removed all privileges based on birth, meaning that everyone was now equal before the law. It also established the right to property as a fundamental principle. This code wasn't just limited to France. It was extended to regions under French control, including parts of the Dutch Republic, Switzerland, Italy, and Germany. In these areas, Napoleon simplified administrative divisions, abolished the feudal system, and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues, which was a huge step forward for social equality. In towns, guild restrictions were removed, allowing for more freedom and competition among artisans and merchants. Additionally, transport and communication systems were improved, making movement and exchange easier than ever before. What's especially important is how ordinary people, peasants, artisans, workers, and emerging entrepreneurs began to enjoy newfound freedoms. They could now operate with more independence, which fueled economic growth. From a broader perspective, both businessmen and small producers started to see the benefits of uniform laws, standardized weights and measures, and a common national currency. These changes made it much easier to move goods and capital across regions, fostering a more integrated economy. All in all, the Napolpunuk Code was a cornerstone of legal and social reform, helping to lay the foundation for modern legal systems and economic relations. Let's talk about the Napoleonic Code. Initially, people in other European countries welcomed the French armies, hoping for positive change. However, that support didn't last long. Over time, opposition grew, and there were several reasons for this shift. One major issue was increased taxes, which burdened the local populations. Censorship also became tighter, limiting freedom of speech and expression. Additionally, many people were forced to join the French army, which made them feel oppressed and resistant to the occupation. These factors contributed to a growing resentment toward French rule, highlighting how even initially welcomed initiatives can face resistance when they come with heavy costs and restrictions. This connects to the overall theme of how revolutionary ideas and military expansion often encounter complex reactions across different regions. After Napoleon's defeat, there was a significant shift in the political landscape in France. The Bourbon dynasty was restored, which marked a return to the old monarchical order. However, this change was not universally welcomed. Empires like Prussia, Russia, Austria, and Britain were actually quite unhappy with Napoleon's rise and his expansionist policies. They saw his defeat as an opportunity to restore stability and conservative order across Europe. That's why, in 1815, these powers came together and defeated Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo. Following this victory, they restored the Bourbon dynasty in France, bringing back Louis XVI as the king. This event is a key turning point because it illustrates how the European powers sought to maintain balance and stability after the upheaval caused by Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars. It also connects to our broader theme of how European nations responded to revolutionary change and sought to restore traditional monarchies. If you look at the map of mid-18th century Europe, you'll notice that there were no nation-states as we understand them today. Instead, what we now know as Germany, Italy, and Switzerland were divided into a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and cantons, each governed by their own rulers and with their own autonomous territories. Eastern and Central Europe were mostly under autocratic monarchies, but within these territories, the populations were incredibly diverse. People didn't see themselves as part of a single national identity or share a common culture. Often, they spoke different languages and belonged to different ethnic groups. Take the Habsburg Empire, for example. It was a vast and complex empire that ruled over Austria-Hungary. It was essentially a patchwork of many different regions and peoples. You had the Alpine regions like Tyrol, Austria, and the Sudetenland. Then, there was Bohemia, which was largely German-speaking among the aristocracy. And in the Italian-speaking provinces of Lombardy and Venetia, you had yet another distinct group. This diversity made it clear that the idea of a unified nation wasn't something that existed at this point. Instead, these areas were a mosaic of different identities, languages, and cultures. Understanding this helps us see how the concept of nationalism would later develop as a way to bring these diverse groups together around shared identity and culture. Let's take a closer look at how nationalism in Europe was taking shape. In Hungary, for example, half of the population spoke Magyar, which is the Hungarian language, while the other half spoke a variety of local dialects. This linguistic diversity made it difficult to foster a strong sense of unity. Similarly, in Galicia, the aristocratic class primarily spoke Polish, adding another layer of cultural difference. Now, beyond these dominant groups, the empire was filled with a wide array of subject peoples. To the north, there were the Bohemians and Slovaks, in Carniola, the Slovenes, to the south, Croats, and to the east, in Transylvania, Romans. These groups had their own languages, cultures, and identities, which often clashed with one another. Such diversity didn't lend itself easily to political unity. The only common thread that linked these varied peoples was their allegiance to the emperor. So, when we ask, how did nationalism and the idea of the nation-state emerge, we see that it was a complex process. It involved people beginning to see themselves not just as subjects of an empire, but as members of distinct nations with their own identities and aspirations. This shift was the foundation for the modern idea of nation-states, where shared language, culture, and identity become the basis for political sovereignty. So let's talk about the aristocracy and the new middle class. Socially and politically, the landed aristocracy was really the dominant class across the continent. They shared a common way of life that helped them stay connected, even across different regions. These aristocrats owned large estates in the countryside as well as townhouses in cities. They also spoke French, especially for diplomacy and high society events, which was a mark of their status. Their families often formed ties through marriage, strengthening their social and political influence. However, it's important to remember that this powerful aristocracy was actually quite small in number. The majority of the population was made up of peasantry, farmers, and rural workers. In Western Europe, much of the land was farmed by tenants and small landowners, which created a somewhat more fragmented landholding pattern. But in Eastern and Central Europe, things looked very different. There, vast estates were cultivated by serfs, bound peasants who worked the land under the control of the landowning aristocrats. This division highlights the stark social and economic differences across regions. The aristocracy's influence was significant, but they were a small elite ruling over a much larger population of peasants and small landholders. This social structure is a key part of understanding the broader societal landscape during this period. So let's take a closer look at the structure of European society, which is quite divided. On one side, we have the aristocracy, the high-class lords. They are the ones with the most power, owning large landholdings, and they dominate society. Their status is high, and they hold all the rights and privileges that come with being part of the ruling class. Interestingly, their population is relatively small compared to the lower classes. On the other side, we have the peasantry, who are landless and belong to the lower class. They make up a much larger portion of the population, but have very few, if any, rights. They are usually tied to the land and work for the aristocracy, but they lack the privileges and power that the aristocrats enjoy. This stark contrast between the high class and the low class highlights the hierarchical nature of European society at that time. It's important to see how this division influenced social, economic, and political life, reinforcing the dominance of the aristocracy, while the peasantry remained more numerous, but with limited rights. This structure is a key part of understanding the overall social organization during this period. Now, let's turn our attention to the emergence of a new social class in Western and Central Europe. Besides the traditional aristocracy and peasantry, a distinct middle class began to take shape. This was largely driven by industrial growth and economic development. This new class was made up of industrialists, businessmen, professionals, and an educated liberal middle class. They played a crucial role in the evolving social landscape. Although their numbers were relatively small until the 19th century, their ideas started to gain traction. Concepts like national unity and the abolition of aristocratic privileges became popular among them. This shift reflects the broader theme of societal transformation during this period, moving towards modern nation-states and more egalitarian social structures. These middle-class ideas helped shape the push for political and social reforms across Europe. Now let's talk about liberal nationalism. The term liberalism actually comes from the Latin word liber, which means free. So, at its core, liberalism is about freedom for the individual and the idea that everyone should be equal before the law. During this period, the new middle class was really pushing for certain political rights. They demanded that all people be treated equally under the law and that individuals have the freedom to pursue their own lives without unnecessary restrictions. Importantly, they weren't against private property. Property rights were still respected. They also believed that government should be based on the consent of the governed, meaning people should have a say in how they're ruled. Let's look at revolutionary France as an example. Initially, the right to vote and stand for election was only given to property-owning men. Women and men without property were excluded from political rights. This created a big movement over the 19th and 20th centuries. Women and non-propertied men organized opposition movements, fighting for equal political rights. So, in summary, liberal nationalism was about expanding political freedoms and rights, but it was a gradual process that faced resistance, especially from groups seeking full equality, including women and the non-propertied. This struggle for inclusion is a key part of the broader theme of political and social change during this era. Let's talk about economic liberalism. Essentially, it stood for the idea of free markets and aimed to eliminate restrictions the state placed on moving goods and capital across borders. This was about allowing economic activities to flow more freely, encouraging growth and efficiency. Now, during Napoleon's rule, the German-speaking regions were quite fragmented. There were about 39 different states, each with its own currency, weights, and measures. This created a lot of problems, things like trade barriers, confusion, and inefficiency. In 1834, a major step was taken with the formation of the Zollverein, which was a customs union led by Prussia. Most of the German states joined this union. Its main purpose was to abolish tariff barriers between these states, making trade smoother and more unified. It also helped to reduce the chaos caused by having over 30 different currencies down to just 2. This simplification made trade and economic cooperation much easier. And an important part of this process was the development of a network of railways. Not only did this boost mobility, people and goods could move faster, but it also helped harness economic interests to the larger goal of national unification. So, in summary, these steps, freeing markets, unifying currencies, and improving transportation, were all crucial in shaping a more integrated and economically stronger German region, which ties back to the broader theme of fostering national unity through economic development. A new conservatism after 1815 marks a significant shift in the political landscape. After the upheavals of the Napoleonic Wars, there was a desire to restore stability and order. This new wave of conservatism emphasized tradition, hierarchy, and the importance of established institutions. It was about preserving what had worked and resisting rapid change or revolutionary ideas. You'll notice that this period also saw the rise of conservative leaders who aimed to stabilize their nations and prevent the chaos of the previous decades. This movement connects to the broader theme of how societies respond to upheaval, by either embracing change or reaffirming their foundational values. So, this new conservatism played a crucial role in shaping Europe's political future after 1815. So, after 1815, a new form of conservatism started to emerge. This movement was rooted in the belief in traditional institutions of both the state and society. Conservatives wanted to preserve these established structures because they valued stability and continuity. They particularly supported the continuation of monarchy, as it provided them with more powers and privileges that they didn't want to lose. Now, let's remember that 1815 was a pivotal year. After Napoleon's defeat, the major powers of Europe, Prussia, Russia, Austria, and Britain, came together to shape the future of the continent. They held a significant meeting at Vienna, which is famously known as the Congress of Vienna. This Congress was hosted by Duke Metternich, who was the Austrian chancellor. His role was crucial in leading the negotiations. The main goal was to draw up a settlement for Europe, aiming to restore stability and maintain the balance of power. This event marked a turning point because it reflected the conservative goal of restoring old regimes and preventing revolutionary upheaval. It's a key moment that connects to our overall theme of how Europe responded to the upheavals of the early 19th century and sought to maintain order through conservative principles. Now, let's turn our attention to the Congress of Vienna in 1815. This was a pivotal moment in history, hosted by the influential Austrian chancellor, Duke Metternich. He played a crucial role in shaping the post-Napoleonic Europe. During the Congress, they essentially recreated the map of Europe, aiming to restore stability after years of chaos and conflict. This redrawing of borders was about more than just territory. It was about establishing a balance of power to prevent future wars. The ideas and decisions made here set the foundation for modern European diplomacy and influence how nations interacted for decades to come. It ties directly into our overall theme of how Europe sought stability and order following the upheaval caused by Napoleon. Now, let's look at the terms and impact of the Congress of Vienna in 1815. First, the Bourbon dynasty was restored to the French throne, signaling a return to traditional monarchy after Napoleon's rule. France, on the other hand, lost the territories it had annexed during Napoleon's expansion, which was a key step in restoring the old balance of power. To prevent France from again becoming a threat, a series of buffer states and boundary adjustments were made around its borders. Notably, the Kingdom of the Netherlands was established, which included present-day Belgium, creating a strong barrier to French expansion. Prussia received significant new territories on its western frontiers, strengthening its position in Central Europe. Austria gained control over northern Italy, increasing its influence in the region. Meanwhile, the German Confederation, consisting of 39 states, was maintained as an important political structure, but it remained largely untouched at this stage. Russia was granted a part of Poland, expanding its influence into Eastern Europe, and Prussia was given a portion of Saxony to bolster its territory. The main objective of the Congress was clear: to restore monarchies across Europe and create a new, conservative order that would maintain peace and stability after years of upheaval. This was about re-establishing the old regimes and preventing revolutionary movements from spreading again, aiming for a balance of power that could sustain stability throughout the continent. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. In 1815, the conservative regimes that were established tended to be quite autocratic in nature. They didn't tolerate criticism or dissent, and their main goal was to suppress any activities that questioned the legitimacy of their rule. One of the key methods they used was imposing censorship laws, which controlled what could be said in newspapers, books, plays, and even songs. Interestingly, despite these restrictions, many of these regimes still reflected ideas of liberty and freedom that were originally associated with the French Revolution. However, the memory of the French Revolution continued to inspire liberals who believed in individual freedoms and questioned authoritarian rule. One of the major issues that liberals and nationalists focused on was freedom of the press. They saw this as a vital right, essential for expressing ideas and challenging the conservative order. So, even though the conservative regimes tried to suppress dissent, the ideals of liberty and freedom kept energizing those who wanted change, highlighting the ongoing tension between autocratic authority and the push for individual rights. This struggle for freedom of expression was a crucial part of the broader movement towards liberal ideas in Europe. After 1815, the fear of repression really pushed many liberal nationalists to go underground. When we say revolutionary during this period, it's not just about protests. It's about a deep commitment to oppose monarchical rule and fight for liberty and freedom. One key figure here is Giuseppe Mazzini, born in Genoa in 1807. He was involved with the secret society of the Carbonari, which was part of the broader revolutionary movement. In fact, he was exiled in 1831 for trying to start a revolution in Liguria. Mazzini believed that nations, as communities of people, were the natural units created by God, which really underscores his nationalist ideals. During this time, secret societies weren't just in Italy. They were spreading across Germany, France, Switzerland, and Poland, showing how widespread these revolutionary ideas were. And it's interesting to note that Duke Metternich, a leading conservative figure, described Mazzini as the most dangerous enemy of our social order. That highlights how threatening these revolutionaries were perceived by the conservative powers trying to maintain the old order. Overall, these revolutionaries like Mazzini played a crucial role in challenging the status quo and inspiring future movements for national independence. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. As conservative regimes tried to consolidate their power, liberalism and nationalism increasingly became associated with revolution across many regions of Europe. This included the Italian and German states, the provinces of the Ottoman Empire, as well as Ireland and Poland. These revolutions were primarily led by the educated middle classes. Think of professors, teachers, clerks, and members of the commercial middle classes. They were driven by a desire for greater political freedom, national identity, and self-determination. This period, often called the Age of Revolutions, spanned from 1830 to 1848 and was marked by widespread efforts to challenge conservative authority and push for liberal reforms. These movements played a crucial role in shaping the modern nation-states we recognize today. Now, moving on to the next significant period, the Age of Revolutions from 1830 to 1848. This was a time marked by widespread upheaval across Europe and beyond. These revolts were driven by a desire for greater political freedom, national independence, and social change. One of the key events was the July Revolution in 1830, which led to the overthrow of the Bourbon King Charles X in France. This revolution was fueled by dissatisfaction with the old monarchy and demands for more liberal reforms. Another major event was the Greek War of Independence, beginning in 1821, where Greeks fought to free themselves from Ottoman rule. This conflict was not only about national liberation, but also inspired many other nationalist movements across Europe. These revolutions reflected a broader push for democracy and national self-determination, themes that tie into the larger narrative of the decline of old monarchies and the rise of new political ideas. So these upheavals, though varied in their causes and outcomes, collectively symbolize a shifting landscape, a move toward modern nation-states and more democratic governance. Today, I want to talk about the July Revolution of 1830, a pivotal event in European history. This revolution was primarily driven by discontent with the Orleans monarchy, which had come to power after the fall of Napoleon. People were frustrated with the corruption, lack of political freedom, and the increasingly conservative policies of King Charles X. The revolution erupted in Paris, where citizens took to the streets to demand change. It was characterized by violent clashes, but ultimately, it led to the abdication of Charles X. This event was significant because it marked the end of absolute monarchy in France and the beginning of a more liberal constitutional monarchy under Louis Philippe. The July Revolution highlights how popular uprisings can shape the course of history and push for greater political freedoms, fitting into our broader theme of the struggle for democracy across Europe. So let's talk about the July Revolution. This was a pivotal moment when the Bourbon dynasty was overthrown, ending their long reign. In its place, a constitutional monarchy was established, with Louis Philippe stepping up as the new king. This shift marked a move toward more liberal and representative government, although it still kept the monarchy in place. Now, a famous remark by Metternich comes to mind. He once said, "When France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold." This really highlights how influential France's political upheavals were on the wider continent. Changes in France often triggered reactions and revolutions across Europe. This leads us to the Revolution of Brussels. The July Revolution in France sparked an uprising in Brussels, which was then part of the United Kingdom of the Netherlands. This uprising was crucial because it eventually led to Belgium breaking away from Dutch control and gaining independence. It's a clear example of how revolutionary ideas and movements spread across borders, shaping the map of Europe. Throughout this period, we see the interconnectedness of European nations and the powerful influence of revolutionary change. It's all part of the broader theme of how these upheavals contributed to the push for national identity and political reform across the continent. The Greek War of Independence was a pivotal moment in history. Greece had been part of the Ottoman Empire since the 15th century, which meant it was under Turkish rule for hundreds of years. The Greeks, however, deeply wanted freedom and self-determination. So, in 1821, they began a revolution to break free from Ottoman control. Support for their cause came from many sources. Greeks living in exile played a crucial role, and Western Europeans, including poets and artists, helped mobilize public opinion. They saw Greece's struggle as part of a broader fight for liberty against a Muslim empire. One notable supporter was Lord Byron, the famous English poet. He not only supported their cause intellectually, but also fought alongside the Greeks. Sadly, he died of fever in 1824, but his involvement highlighted how international sympathy and support were vital. Eventually, this collective effort led to Greece being recognized as an independent nation. The Treaty of Constantinople in 1832 officially acknowledged Greece's independence, marking a significant victory in the broader story of national liberation and the decline of empires. This chapter exemplifies how international support and cultural influence can shape major political changes, aligning with our overall theme of independence movements across Europe. So, after the revolutionary waves, what comes next? Well, this slide explores the role of the Romantic imagination and how it fueled a sense of national feeling. During this period, we see how ideas of culture, history, and identity became powerful tools for shaping national consciousness. Now, let's talk about the hardships people faced: hunger, hardship, and popular revolt. These struggles weren't just about survival, they also inspired a collective desire for change and independence. Moving on to 1848, which is often called the Year of Revolutions, we see a key moment: the Revolution of the Liberals. These revolts were driven by demands for political rights, national unification, and constitutional governance. It's important to remember that these revolts weren't just political upheavals, they also reflected deep social and cultural shifts. The Romantic ideas about national identity and cultural pride played a big role in motivating people to fight for their future. So, in essence, after the initial revolutionary waves, the Romantic imagination and national feeling continued to shape the course of history, fueling ongoing struggles for independence and self-determination. So, when we think about the emergence of nationalism, it's important to realize that it wasn't just the result of wars and battles. Culture played a crucial role in shaping the idea of a nation. Artistic expressions like art, poetry, stories, and music helped people articulate and feel connected to their national identity. During the Romantic period, artists and thinkers moved away from reason and scientific thinking, instead emphasizing emotions, intuition, and mystical feelings. This shift was key in fostering a deeper emotional connection to the concept of the nation. A particularly influential figure was the German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder. He popularized the idea of the Volksgeist, the spirit of the people, by collecting and promoting folk songs, poetry, and dances. These cultural elements became symbols of national identity. Even in cases like Poland, where partitions kept the country divided and suppressed, the sense of nationalism persisted through music and language. Music became a vital tool for keeping the national spirit alive under foreign rule. For example, Karol Karpinski celebrated Poland's national struggles through his operas and compositions. He transformed folk dances like the Polonaise and mazurka into powerful symbols of nationalist pride. In essence, culture, especially music and folk traditions, became a vital way for nations to preserve and express their unique identities, even in challenging times. Today, I want to highlight two influential figures whose ideas significantly shaped intellectual history. First, we have Karol Karpinski, a composer and patriot whose work not only advanced Polish national identity, but also reflected a deep connection between cultural expression and national sovereignty. His contributions remind us how art can serve as a form of resistance and unity during challenging times. Next, we come to Gottfried Herder, a philosopher and literary critic known for emphasizing the importance of language, culture, and history in shaping human identity. Herder believed that each nation's unique cultural expressions are vital to understanding humanity as a whole. His ideas about cultural diversity and the value of local traditions tie directly into our broader theme of how ideas about identity, culture, and nationalism evolve over time. Together, Karpinski and Herder illustrate the dynamic ways in which cultural figures can influence national consciousness and contribute to the broader Enlightenment and Romantic movements. Their work reminds us that culture and identity are deeply interconnected, shaping how societies perceive themselves and their place in the world. Language played a crucial role in fostering nationalist sentiments. After the Russian occupation, the Polish language was pushed out of schools, and Russian was imposed as the official language. This was part of the broader effort to suppress Polish identity. However, in 1831, there was an armed rebellion against Russian rule, which was ultimately suppressed. Despite this, language became a powerful tool for resistance. Polish was still used in church gatherings and for religious instructions, serving as a symbol of national unity and defiance. Many priests and bishops who kept using Polish faced punishment and banishment, highlighting how sensitive the language was as a symbol of resistance. So, in this context, Polish was more than just a language. It became a symbol of the struggle against Russian dominance and a way for people to express their national identity. This shows how language can be a potent form of resistance in the broader fight for independence. The 1830s were a difficult period across Europe, marked by widespread economic hardship. One of the main issues was large-scale unemployment. Many people were out of work, but there weren't enough jobs available to meet the demand. This created a lot of frustration and instability. Cities became extremely overcrowded as more people migrated from rural areas in search of work and better opportunities. This rapid urbanization led to the growth of slums, where living conditions were often poor and crowded. At the same time, small producers in towns faced tough competition from imports of cheap machine-made goods from England. Since industrialization was more advanced there, their goods were cheaper and easier to produce, making it hard for local artisans and small businesses to survive. Peasants, too, were struggling under the weight of feudal dues and obligations. When food prices rose or there was a bad harvest, poverty spread quickly, affecting both rural and urban populations. All these economic hardships contributed to growing unrest, fueling hunger, hardship, and eventually popular revolts. These struggles set the stage for a period of social upheaval as people demanded change and better living conditions. In 1845, we see the Silesian Uprising, a significant event where weavers took a stand. They revolted against the contractors who supplied the raw materials and issued orders for finishing textiles. The core issue was the low payments they received, which fueled their dissatisfaction. On June 4th, around 2 p.m., a large crowd of weavers marched to the contractor's mansion. Their demand was simple. They wanted higher wages, but things escalated quickly. The weavers created a ruckus, damaging property in the process. The contractor, fearing for his safety, fled with his family to a neighboring village. However, that village refused to shelter them, leaving the contractor vulnerable. After about 24 hours, he returned, called in the army, and unfortunately, 11 weavers were shot during this conflict. This event highlights how economic grievances and the struggle for fair wages led to violent confrontations, connecting to the broader theme of worker unrest during this period. In 1848, we see a significant turning point with the Revolution of the Liberals. This movement was mainly led by the educated middle classes who believed in creating a modern nation-state based on parliamentary principles. They demanded a constitution, along with freedoms like press freedom and freedom of association, which were essential for a functioning democracy. A key event took place in Frankfurt, where many political associations united to push for an all-German National Assembly. On May 18th of that year, 831 elected representatives marched together to take their seats in what became the Frankfurt Parliament, held in the Church of St. Paul. The goal was to draft a constitution for a unified Germany, and this constitution proposed a monarchy that was accountable to a parliament. They even offered the crown to Friedrich Wilhelm IV of Prussia, but he famously rejected it, aligning himself with other monarchs who opposed the elected assembly. It's important to note that the middle class dominated this parliament, which reflected their political influence. And notably, women participated actively in this liberal movement, showcasing their growing involvement in political change. This entire movement, highlights the broader push for national unity and liberal reforms that would shape modern Germany's political landscape. Women formed their own political associations, founded newspapers, and took part in political meetings and demonstrations. However, despite their active involvement, they were still denied suffrage rights during the election of the Assembly. This highlights the ongoing struggle for women's political rights during this period. In the years after 1848, we see a shift in the autocratic monarchies of Central and Eastern Europe. They started to introduce reforms similar to what had already happened in Western Europe before 1815. For example, serfdom and bonded labor were abolished in the Habsburg dominions and in Russia. These changes marked a significant move towards modernization and greater societal freedom. Now, focusing on 1848, the year of the Liberal Revolution, it was a pivotal moment. The revolution was driven by liberal ideas advocating for constitutional government, civil liberties, and national self-determination. It was a revolutionary wave that challenged old autocratic systems and aimed to establish more democratic institutions. This year truly symbolizes the push for liberal reforms across Europe, setting the stage for future political transformations. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Let's explore the making of Germany and Italy. Both of these nations were originally made up of multiple kingdoms and regions, rather than unified nations as we know them today. This fragmentation was a significant obstacle to their development as strong, centralized states. The process of unification in Germany and Italy was a pivotal moment in world history because it marked the creation of more unified, powerful nations from diverse territories. These events helped shape the political landscape of Europe and influenced future movements toward national unity. Understanding their unification helps us see how modern nation-states emerged from a patchwork of smaller regions, which is a key theme in the broader story of political development. Now, let's talk about the unification of Germany, a pivotal moment in European history. At the center of this process was Otto von Bismarck, who is often called the architect of German unification. He played a crucial role in bringing together the various German states into a single nation in 1871. Bismarck was the first German chancellor, a position he held until 1890, and his leadership was instrumental in shaping modern Germany. One of his most famous phrases is "blood and iron." This phrase underscores his belief that military strength and industrial power were essential tools for achieving national unity. Bismarck believed that diplomacy alone wouldn't be enough. Sometimes, force and pragmatic action were necessary. Connecting this to the larger theme of nation-building and political strategy, Bismarck's approach highlights how a combination of diplomacy, military might, and political skill can lead to unification. Understanding his methods helps us see how Germany transformed from a collection of fragmented states into a powerful, unified nation. So let's talk about the unification of Germany. In 1848, a new middle class emerged in Germany, and they aimed to unite several German kingdoms. These kingdoms were often controlled by monarchies and large landowners, which made unification challenging. Their goal was to create one nation-state governed by an elected body, moving away from absolute rule. Now, Prussia, a powerful German kingdom, took the lead in this effort. Otto von Bismarck, who was the chief minister of Prussia, played a crucial role. His strategy was to use the strength of the Prussian army and the bureaucracy to achieve unification. Over the course of 7 years, Bismarck and the Prussian military fought 3 major wars, one against Austria, one against France, and another involving Denmark. They also collaborated with Austria, France, and Denmark's armies when needed. These wars were essential in defeating opposition and incorporating the smaller German kingdoms into a unified nation. This process ultimately marked the completion of German unification. It's a significant moment because it transformed a collection of fragmented states into a unified nation, shaping the future of Germany as we know it today. In 1871, a pivotal moment in German history took place when William I was declared the Emperor of Germany at the Palace of Versailles. This event marked the culmination of a complex process of unification that was driven primarily by the strength and organization of the Prussian state. The unification of Germany was not just about political consolidation. It showcased how powerful and influential Prussia had become in shaping the region's future. During this period, we also see significant reforms across various sectors like banking, currency, administration, and the judiciary. These reforms were crucial because they helped create a more unified and modern nation-state, laying the groundwork for Germany's economic and political stability moving forward. Overall, this unification was a key chapter in the broader story of nation-building in Europe, demonstrating how strategic leadership and institutional reforms can transform a collection of separate states into a unified, powerful nation. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Today, I want to talk about the unification of Italy in 1861 and highlight the key figures who were the architects of this historic event. First, we have Giuseppe Mazzana, a passionate revolutionary whose ideas fueled the movement. He founded groups like Young Italy in Massa and Young Europe in Bern, which aimed to inspire unity and independence across the continent. Mazzana was truly the soul behind the push for unification. Next, there's Count Camillo da Cava, who played a crucial political role as the chief minister. His leadership and strategic diplomacy helped guide Italy toward unification through careful political maneuvering and alliances. Cava was essentially the mastermind behind the scenes, steering the process forward. Then we have Giuseppe Garibaldi, often called the Bismarck of Italy because of his military skills. He organized armed volunteers, known as the Red Shirts, who fought to free various parts of Italy from foreign control. Garibaldi's bold military campaigns were instrumental in shaping the new unified Italy. Finally, Victor Emmanuel II, the King of Sardinia, was proclaimed the king of a united Italy. His leadership and support gave a symbol of unity to the movement, and his proclamation marked the official unification. All of these figures played interconnected roles, political, military, and ideological, to achieve Italy's unification. Their combined efforts exemplify how different strategies and leadership styles can come together to transform a nation, fitting perfectly into our broader theme of nation building and collective effort. Let's take a closer look at the key architects behind the unification of Italy. These individuals played crucial roles in shaping the course of Italian history during this transformative period. First, we have Count Camillo di Cavour, a brilliant statesman and diplomat who worked tirelessly to unite the northern regions. He's often seen as the mastermind behind diplomatic strategies that brought different Italian states together. Then there's Giuseppe Garibaldi, the passionate revolutionary and military leader known for his daring campaigns. His famous expedition of the Thousand in 1860 was pivotal in conquering southern Italy and uniting it with the north. Lastly, Victor Emmanuel II, the King of Sardinia, who became the first king of a united Italy. His leadership symbolized the national unity that these efforts aimed to achieve. Together, these figures represent the political, military, and symbolic efforts that ultimately led to the unification of Italy, fitting into our broader theme of how diverse elements can come together to forge a unified nation. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Italy was also politically fragmented into various small states, which were ruled by monarchies. During the mid-19th century, only the state of Sardinia-Piedmont was ruled by the Italian monarchy. The northern states were under the Austrian monarchy, central Italy was under the control of the Pope, and the states in the south were under the control of the Bourbon kings of Spain. This fragmentation made Italy vulnerable and hindered its progress, but it also created a challenge that needed to be overcome for unification. Giuseppe Mazzini was a revolutionary who actively supported the unification of the Italian states. He believed in a united Italy and worked passionately toward this goal. To achieve this, he formed a secret society called Young Italy, which aimed to inspire Italians to rise up and unite. Mazzini's efforts and ideas played a crucial role in stirring national pride and laying the groundwork for Italy's eventual unification. This period marked a significant step in moving towards the broader theme of Italy becoming one nation. After the failed uprisings in 1831 and 1848, the responsibility for unifying Italy fell to the state of Sardinia-Piedmont. This was a crucial turning point, as they took on the task of unification after earlier efforts had not succeeded. The key figure here was King Victor Emmanuel II, who played a central role throughout this process. He was actively supported by his chief minister, Count Cavour, who was the mastermind behind the political and diplomatic strategies that led to Italy's unification. Cavour's leadership was instrumental in guiding Sardinia-Piedmont through this complex process. In 1859, Sardinia-Piedmont scored a significant victory by defeating the Austrians, which was a major step toward unification. This victory weakened Austrian influence in Italy and set the stage for further unification efforts. Then, in 1860, Italian forces, with the help of Giuseppe Garibaldi and his volunteers, marched into southern Italy. This campaign was crucial because it helped bring the southern regions into the fold, effectively uniting the entire Italian peninsula. Following these events, King Victor Emmanuel II was proclaimed the king of a united Italy, a moment of national pride and a symbol of successful unification. And finally, in 1871, the process was completed with the capture of Rome, officially making Italy a fully united nation. This entire journey from fragmented states to one unified country is a remarkable story of perseverance and strategic leadership, fitting into the larger theme of Italy's national identity and independence. The strange case of Britain is a fascinating story of how a nation gradually came together, rather than appearing overnight. You see, before the 18th century, there wasn't really a single British nation. Instead, the people living in the British Isles identified mainly as English, Welsh, Scots, or Irish. Each of these groups had their own distinct political systems, social traditions, and cultural identities. As time went on, especially as England grew wealthier and more powerful, it started to dominate the other parts of the islands. This was a slow process of integration and consolidation, which laid the groundwork for a united identity. A pivotal moment came in 1688, when the English Parliament took a dramatic step by seizing power from the monarchy. This shift was crucial because it set the stage for further political unification. Then, in 1707, the Act of Union was passed, uniting England and Scotland into a single political entity. This marked the official birth of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. So, this transformation wasn't a sudden event, but a gradual evolution, shaped by political change and growing national identity. It's a key part of understanding how Britain as a nation-state came to be, which fits perfectly into our overall theme of nation-building and historical development. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Let's take a closer look at what we call the strange case of Britain. During this period, the Parliament was largely controlled by the English, and this had significant implications. The political and cultural identities of the Scots were systematically suppressed, meaning their distinct traditions and ways of life were often ignored or undermined. When it came to religion, things got even more intense. Catholics in Scotland faced brutal suppression whenever they tried to regain their independence or express their faith freely. Moving over to Ireland, we see a complex mix of populations, Protestants and Catholics. The English supported the Protestants, helping establish and maintain their rule. Meanwhile, Catholics, who actually made up the majority in Ireland, frequently revolted against British control. But these revolts were met with harsh suppression as well. In 1801, Ireland was forcibly incorporated into Britain, which meant it officially became part of the United Kingdom. English language and culture then dominated Ireland and Scotland, further subordinating them to Britain. So overall, this slide highlights how, during this period, Britain's internal policies suppressed local identities and maintained control through political and cultural dominance. This pattern of domination plays a key role in understanding the broader story of Britain's expansion and the complex relationships within its nations. Let's explore how artists and painters visualized the idea of a nation. One of the key concepts they used was allegory. This is when an abstract idea, like greed, envy, love, or even the nation itself, is represented through a person or an object. It's interesting because an allegorical story often has two layers of meaning, one literal and one symbolic. For example, nations were frequently portrayed as female figures. These aren't meant to be specific women from history, but rather personifications that embody the spirit or ideals of a nation. During the French Revolution, artists used this technique extensively. They depicted female allegories to symbolize core ideas like liberty, equality, and fraternity. So, in essence, these artistic representations helped communicate complex national ideals visually, making the abstract concepts more relatable and powerful. This approach connects directly to our overall theme of how art reflects and shapes the idea of a nation. Let's take a moment to explore the concept of visualizing the nation. This is all about how we can represent the identity, culture, and values of a country through various visual means. When we talk about visualizing the nation, we're referring to maps, images, symbols, and other visual tools that help us understand and interpret what a nation stands for. These visuals are powerful because they communicate complex ideas quickly and effectively, often conveying a sense of unity and shared identity. For example, a national flag or emblem can evoke feelings of pride and belonging. Similarly, maps that highlight regional cultures or historical sites can tell stories about a nation's past and present. Throughout this presentation, we've seen how visual tools are essential in shaping perceptions and narratives about a country. They help us connect with the overall theme of understanding national identity in a more tangible, accessible way. Visualizing the nation isn't just about pretty pictures. It's about capturing the essence of what makes a country unique and bringing that to life for everyone to see. Now, let's take a moment to explore the allegories represented on this slide. When we think about allegories, we're really looking at symbolic representations that convey deeper meanings. Here, we see two prominent examples: Germania, representing Germany, and Mariana, symbolizing France. Germania is often depicted as a strong, noble female figure, embodying the ideals of German unity and strength. She's a powerful symbol during periods of national identity formation, embodying resilience and the spirit of the German people. On the other side, we have Mariana, which is a well-known symbol of France. She's typically portrayed as a female figure wearing a Phrygian cap, representing liberty, freedom, and the French Republic. Mariana has been a unifying symbol through various revolutionary eras, embodying the ideals of liberty and the fight for democracy. These allegories are crucial because they serve as visual and symbolic tools that evoke national pride and identity. They encapsulate complex ideas, like sovereignty, liberty, and resilience, in a single, recognizable figure. Connecting this to our overall theme, these allegories remind us how nations use symbolism to shape collective identity and inspire unity, especially during times of change or challenge. They're more than just artistic representations. They're powerful tools for political and cultural expression. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Let's take a closer look at the meanings behind some of these symbols. First, the broken chains represent being freed, symbolizing liberation and independence. The breastplate with the eagle is a powerful symbol of the German Empire's strength and heroism, reflecting resilience and might. The crown of oak leaves signifies heroism and honor, often associated with bravery and resilience. The sword stands for readiness to fight, a symbol of defense and willingness to stand up for one's country. Surrounding the sword with an olive branch indicates a willingness to make peace, emphasizing diplomacy and reconciliation. Now, the black, red, and gold tricolour represents the flag of the liberal nationalist movement of 1848. It marks the beginning of a new era, symbolizing hope, unity, and the pursuit of freedom. When we look at these symbols collectively, they tell a story of a nation that values strength and heroism, but also aspires to peace and renewal. These symbols are not just decorative. They embody the ideals and values that have shaped German history and identity. Let's delve into the concepts of nationalism and imperialism. In the mid-19th century, nationalism, which is essentially a strong love and pride for one's own country, started to become more intense and, unfortunately, more narrow-minded. This meant that countries became less tolerant of each other and often competed fiercely for control over territories. Imperialism, on the other hand, refers to one country exerting control over another region or nation, usually through military strength. This was a period where powerful nations expanded their influence by controlling lands beyond their borders. Now, this surge of nationalism had a particularly explosive impact in the Balkan region. The Balkans, which includes present-day Romania, Bulgaria, Macedonia, Croatia, Greece, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, and Montenegro, was home to the Slavs. The disintegration of the Ottoman Empire in this area created a very volatile situation. Each of these states was eager to gain independence, but at the same time, they were jealous of each other's gains. This intense competition and desire for independence made the region highly unstable, setting the stage for future conflicts. So, as we've seen, these forces of nationalism and imperialism not only shaped the political landscape of the Balkans, but also contributed to the broader tensions leading up to larger global conflicts. Let's take a closer look at the Balkan region. This area is incredibly significant due to its strategic location and diverse cultural history. When we talk about the Balkans, we're referring to a complex mosaic of countries with unique identities, yet interconnected through centuries of shared history and interactions. The region has historically been a crossroads for different civilizations, which has shaped its dynamic geopolitical landscape. Understanding the Balkans helps us grasp broader regional trends and the importance of stability and cooperation in this part of Europe. As we see, its influence extends beyond borders, impacting regional security, economic development, and political stability. So, keeping an eye on the Balkans is essential for appreciating the larger picture of European and global affairs. Let's take a closer look at how nationalism and imperialism shaped this period. As the Ottoman Empire's control over the Balkan region weakened, individual European nationalities began to break away and declare their independence one by one. This process created a lot of upheaval, as these diverse Slavic groups struggled to define their own identities and establish sovereign states. Naturally, this led to increased conflict within the Balkans, making the region a hotbed of tension and rivalry. At the same time, major European powers like England, France, Russia, and Germany were all vying for influence and control in the Balkans. This competition wasn't just about regional dominance. It was about establishing their own prominence on the world stage. And as this rivalry intensified, it ultimately contributed to the outbreak of the First World War in 1914. Meanwhile, outside of Europe, we see a different but related wave of resistance. Many Asian and African countries, which had been colonized by European powers, began to oppose imperial domination. These anti-imperialist movements were driven by nationalism, people fighting to create independent nations of their own. So, you see, the themes of nationalism and imperialism are deeply interconnected here. They fueled conflicts within Europe and sparked resistance in colonies abroad, shaping the course of global history during this era. This period really underscores how these forces can drive both division and the fight for independence across the world. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide.